Good morning. I'm Charlotte Jones, co-host of the John Telford Detroit Show, coming to you every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock on WJZZ Cool TV. Also streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Dr. John Telford is a former Detroit Public Schools superintendent, a former world-class athlete, conqueror of Olympic champions, a championship track coach, poet, newspaper columnist, a longtime civil rights crusader, and author of 7 books. Creative Insubordination, What Old Men Know, The Will Robinson Story, The Poetic Prancings of Mad John, The Poet Emperor of Earth, and his explosive autobiography, A Life on the Run. Plus, another upcoming poetry book, Athletes, Activism, and Apple Boughs, a Detroit poetic epic. His books are available on Amazon.com or by calling 313-460-8272. That's 313-460-8272. Dr. Telford has been called a legend and also a lightning rod for controversy. A recipient of the City Council Spirit of Detroit Award and the Joe Louis Foundation Spirit of the Champ Award. He was named Wayne State University's Alumnus of the Year, and a Detroit chalk is named for him. His email is drjohntelfordedd@aol.com. That's dr.johntelfordedd@aol.com. Dr. Telford also has a show on WCHB AM 1340 that airs on Saturdays at 9:30 in the morning and Mondays at 6:30 in the evening. That's on WCHB AM 1340, Saturdays at 9:30 a.m. and Mondays at 6:30 p.m. And now, without further ado, I present to you that old native Detroiter, the one and only Dr. John Telford.
Thank you, Charlotte Jones.
You are welcome.
A.K.A. Char J., author of A Ain't Always for Apple. A Ain't Always for Apple, an erotic adult alphabet book. And Char, if you ever sell this book and you ever get somebody to market it, you're going to be a millionaire-ess, if there is such
I receive that.
My name is Detroit. I'm a blue-collar town. Blue salt melts my mid-March snow. Speedy cars and sprinters spring from me. I father fierce fighters and funky music. In a Motown moment, I can spit the blues right back in a bureaucrat's eye. Have you never seen blue salt? No complex chemistry here, only the old color of a new sky. And there's a new sky dawning on Detroit today, and a new sky dawning on WJZZ Cool TV, our internet television station here, because we have got James Ford in the studio today. James Ford, that baseball aficionado, that baseball coach at Old Mumford High School, that baseball scout. So James, welcome to the John Telford Show with Char J., my co-host.
Thank you very much, John.
And tell us, before I start asking you some questions that I ask you to send me about yourself, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, my name is James Ford. I was a baseball coach at Henry Ford High School for 10 years and baseball coach at Redford High School for 2 years, and I taught in the Detroit Public School for 30 years.
You never coached at Mumford?
Never coached at Mumford.
Okay, I got that wrong. Okay.
But that's okay.
All right.
I used to beat Mumford all the time, so that was good enough. I might as well have been the coach.
Yeah. They needed you to be a coach.
Right.
Okay, well, so what are you doing? What are you doing now? I know you're a writer. You know,
Well,
you and I
right,
both
I
write,
write
but-
now. I write for the Detroit Native Sun. I do an article called Real Talk, and I'm also the founder of the Obama Weekend. I was a former professional baseball scout after I was a teacher in Detroit Public Schools and a coach in Detroit Public Schools.
What was the name of that weekend?
Obama Weekend. It's a first weekend in August. We celebrate his legacy. We try to keep the kids involved in what he was about, who he was, and we think that he was a gentleman that kids should basically try to patronize themselves after, because he thought before he acted, and that's what children do not do now. They do not think before they act.
Okay.
Isn't Maurice Badgett involved with that too, or is he?
I probably, but
Yeah, I think he's involved.
you know, that type of
I think he's
thing.
involved in that.
Right.
Where did you play ball?
Well, I played so much baseball, I almost forgot. I played baseball actually in the Sandlots, and then I played at Detroit Central High School. I played at Wayne State University. I played semi-pro baseball, and I coached, as I said, at Henry Ford. And I started baseball in the backyard and the Sandlots Little League field in Detroit. I played every kind of baseball that you can play.
Where'd you play semi-pro?
Well, I played for a team called, was Gene Holmes' team. It was the Rebels, and I played for them, the Bruins, and then I played for a team called Ethel's Cocktail Lounge. They were a semi-pro team.
That was in Detroit.
Yeah, all
Yeah.
in Detroit.
Yeah.
And I ended my career playing fast pitch softball, which was really competitive for Alvito's Auto Wash, who was a very good team.
Did you know Sammy G?
I didn't know Sammy G, but I heard a lot about him.
Yeah, Sammy G, you know, he was a custodian at Southeastern
Right,
when I was track coach there.
right,
And he knew more about basketball than the basketball coach.
right.
And he used to give those kids tips. Sammy G, you know, according to Will Robinson, you know, who coached with me at this school right here,
Right,
Pershing High School.
right.
Will Robinson said that Sammy G was the greatest athlete he had ever coached.
I've also heard that.
And he coached some great ones. He coached Gene Big Daddy Lipscomb. He coached Lorenzo Wright. He coached Walt Jenkins. I mean, he coached some great ones. Charlie McIntosh.
Right, right,
But
right.
he said that Sammy G was the greatest athlete that he had ever coached. He also coached Stan Allen,
Well,
who was a state high jump champion. That
well, you
was
might want to throw Ron Teasley in there too. He was
Ron
probably the best
Teasley, fine baseball
coming
player.
out of Detroit.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's my age, I think. Ron's
Right.
somewhere in my vicinity. In fact, Ron Teasley played at Old Miller High School,
Right,
and he was a real good friend of Dr. Aaron Gordon's,
Right.
Colonel Aaron Gordon, who ran on a world record relay team at the University of Michigan. Because we got to talk about track today, too.
right.
You know,
Oh, of course.
I'm going to be doing that, but I wanted to ask you. Tell us a little bit about your days as a pro baseball scout. You know, what years and what teams did you scout for?
Well, actually, I scouted 30 years, simultaneously kind of dealing with when I was teaching and scouting. I worked for the Phillies, the Mets, the Padres, the Pirates, the Reds, and the Cleveland Indians. And they actually, what the greatest thing that I really think I accomplished, I never got fired. And I never got fired from either team, but it was predicted before I even started scouting that I would get fired my first week. And I want to tell you a story about that. When I first started scouting, I was probably the only black scout around, and all the guys that were not my color, they all congregated and put a bet out that I wouldn't last a month, you know, as a scout.
And you lasted 30 years.
Yeah, well, I found a kid over in Canada who they never saw, and he got drafted by the San Diego Padres, and all of them got fired because I was a new scout and found a person that they never seen, and they all got fired. So that was one of the stories, you know, and I was quite happy with that I came in as a new guy and found a guy that maybe 6 or 7 guys didn't even know about, and he was signed with the Padres.
So what does that entail? Your scouting, are you looking for a specific, because you can see somebody and they're doing a good job, but when they get to you, they don't do that good of a job anymore. So how do you know who has the talent and who doesn't?
Well, being a professional baseball scout, it's just, you're born to be a player, to be a major league player, first of all.
Right.
And you as a scout, you have to go and see him when he's good, you have to see him bad, you have to see him when he's average. And you have to make the decision out of your own recollection of what you've seen, can he play? And you usually see him over and over again. And then we used to have an old word that if in doubt, check out. In other words, if you ever doubt that a person is not a big league player, you check out. Once you doubt him one time, you're gone.
Okay.
It's just simple as that.
I loved to play baseball when I was a little kid. I mean, I did it from sun up to sundown. In fact, I used to turn the clock back when my mother made me practice the violin. You know.
Yeah.
I'd turn it forward and try to fool her that I'd
I got
done
a
my
picture
hour.
of that in Florida. A kid practicing the violin, and his mother won't let him go play baseball.
Yeah, hey, that was exactly the way it was with my mother. The kids are out there playing violin. But, you know, when I got to Northwestern High School as a freshman, I wanted to play baseball.
Right.
But when they timed me for 40 yards, you know, they said, oh, no, this kid's running track. And you could not play baseball and run track.
Right.
In DPS in those days. You had
Right.
to take a choice.
Right.
So they chose for me. I
Right.
wanted to play baseball.
Right.
I ran a 4.5 when I was a ninth grader.
Right.
In fact, at Denby, I ran a 4.4.
So what were your times, John, in like the 100, 200, and 400 meters?
Oh, as an adult, you know, I ran 100 meters in 10.4, 200 meters in 20.6 at Philadelphia, and 400 meters in 45 and 2/10 seconds in Europe. I mean, I was ranked. I was actually ranked between number 1 and number 2 in the quarter mile for a number of years. And I was ranked up there too in the 200. Never in the 100 though. Couldn't start fast in the 100. But James, I want to ask you, when you became a scout, was it really a dream come true for you?
Yeah, it
or-
was a dream come true. I'll be very honest with you. I was sitting at a baseball game getting paid to watch a baseball game.
Yeah, isn't that
And,
something?
Yeah, I was sitting at a baseball game to get paid. And it was the money was quite lucrative, and actually back in those days, I'm sure it's now, I was getting $30 a day for meal money, and I got my tank full up with gas, as much gas as I wanted. So it was like a dream come true. And then I would show up at the games and watch the games and find the best player there. Sometimes it was quite easy. I would drive like maybe to Chicago or Cleveland somewhere and look at the field and there's nobody there, then just drive all the way back home and I had the rest of the day to myself.
So you
So
were
it was quite-
among the first Black Scouts.
Pretty much, pretty much, yeah, in the area, yes. There were other scouts, other places maybe, but in Detroit area, I was pretty much one of the first blacks to kind of come on the scene, and it was, as I said, it was a dream come true. It was fun. It was the highlight of my life. Yes, it was.
Well, it would have been the highlight of my life, I think, too, because I could get on base all the time. When I was a little kid, you know, the big boys would choose me, you know. We
Right,
used to
right.
do the thing on the bat and choose up, you know. And they would choose me because I could always hit a single between second and third.
Right.
And in softball, even when I was a little kid, I could get from home plate to first plate in about 2 seconds.
Right.
That's how fast I could do it.
Right.
Yeah, so I was always on base, you know, and then I steal second, steal third, and steal home. I used to do
Right,
that,
right.
but they would not let me play baseball. But you played a lot of baseball.
Yeah, I played a lot of baseball from 7 years old to almost 57 years old.
You know, you mentioned that 2 strange things happened to you during the course of
Actually, yeah, two. I was at the stadium in Cleveland, Ohio, one of the complexes for the college players. And the ground crew man came in and saw all the scouts there. And I was kind of sitting over in the corner. And he told me to get out. And so I just grabbed my stuff and got out. And then all the other guys that knew I was a scout looked and said, you know, you just put the Philly scout out.
Wow.
And everybody in there started laughing. So the head coach for the team that I was going to see, he ran out and got me and started brushing me off and everything and said, hey man, he didn't mean that kind of stuff.
No.
And it was really funny. I mean, it was the funniest thing that happened. Everybody started laughing and say, you just put the Philly scout out in the rain.
Why do you think?
Well, I know it wasn't why did he think he wasn't used to seeing a black scout.
That's what I
So
wanted
he
to
thought I was just snuck in and trying to get out the rain. But they apologized and all that kind of stuff. But it was funny to me.
You're watching WJZZ Cool TV, live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like us, follow us, share us, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching the WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world.
Thank you, Char J.,
It was another
author of AA Knowledge for Apple, for that station identification.
incident I wanna
And
tell
I
you
want to
about.
tell you,
Okay.
James, strange thing happened to me too. And this is supposed to be a poetry show, so I'm going to read a poem, and it's apropos to my racing. And the title of the poem is called Ode to Giovanni Scavo. Now, Giovanni Scavo was the Italian champion. He was also European champion, 400 meters. Could run a 46-second race when he was only 19 years old. And this is the poem. And a good listening piece for this poem is Gard Marx' In Italian Overture, Opus 49. I always give I don't always do it, but sometimes I give a piece of classical music to be read with one of my poems. And the way this poem goes is, in 1957, in summertime Bologna, upon Riunione Internazionale, I defeated Scavo in the 400 metri. That's 400 meters. I was 21. He just turned 19. Atletica Leggeras Infante il Terrible. Before the race, the sold-out crowd had chanted Scavo really loud. Afterward, we traded pins and promised that we'd write. From Italia, by slow freighter, came this letter 2 months later. John and Gio run 1-2 in Rome Olympics, 1960. He was making a prediction. Just before I'd read he'd driven fast and far in his Ferrari toward the reaches of the marches from the famed eternal city, crashing high up on a mountain near the heights of the Abruzzi, and there died in his Ferrari. Italia mourned her campione, the champion runner Giovanni. And you know, the tale to that story is this. That young man probably would have won the Olympic 400. I mean, he was already running 46 seconds when he was 19 years old. That was 1957. 3 years later, he'd have been, 22 years old in his prime, and he would have been very hard to beat.
Was that your most memorable race, beating him?
It was, and I'll tell you why it was, because they were all shouting Scavo when I and my American teammate, my U.S. teammate Lang Stanley, who was national half-mile champion out of San Jose State. It was very unnerving. You got 30,000 people all screaming Scavo, Scavo. We're getting down on our starting blocks. But after I beat him, there was an eerie silence, and all of a sudden, this part of the stadium up here started shouting Teleford, because there'd been an extra E in my name printed in the meet program. They started shouting Teleford. Pretty soon, this whole stadium is shouting Teleford. So the whole stadium, I got 30,000 people. The flags go up. I got 30,000 people shouting my name. So I would say that may have been the most memorable moment. Because even in my national championship races in the United States, there weren't thousands and thousands and thousands of people screaming my name. But the eerie thing about this is that I got a letter from him by slow freighter after I had read in the headline of the New York Times that he got killed, that he was dead.
Wow.
It was like getting a letter from a ghost.
Yeah,
Right.
And that was really a strange thing.
You have another strange thing.
Yeah, your second strange occurrence.
Well, I had a lot of them. I went to this small town, and I had to see this player, and I was parked, and it was early in the morning, and I was trying. There was no GPS back then or anything. I was just going by maps and just trying to figure out where I was at. But I was trying to see this player.
What small town were you in?
I don't know. It could have been Bad Axe or somewhere. I don't know.
In Michigan?
Yeah, but it was small, and the police came over. And they started asking me all type of questions, get out the car, and all this kind of stuff. But this was years ago.
Yeah.
And get out the car, this and that. So I said, well, I think I was with the Mets then.
Yeah.
And then, so I said, I'm trying to see this player. He's a pretty good player. I heard about him. He's up here. And he called the police chief. And the police chief said, wait a minute, man. y'all got the Met scout. You got him almost in handcuffs.
Yeah,
I
man.
ended up with a
It's-
police escort, sirens,
Oh, wow.
and everything. I'm in the back, a black man driving through an all-white town, following the police,
Bad axe machine.
taking me to
game.
the ball game, and I had a police escort. It went from almost being arrested to a police escort. It was funny.
Bad Axe, Michigan.
I think it was Bad X. I don't know.
You're not sure of that. What were some of the other amenities and successes that you'd like to
Well,
tell us about?
My
you know?
greatest success, the Tigers had a third baseman that was on the bench. His name was Phil Collins, and he was on the bench. He hadn't played in years, and Sparky didn't like him.
Yeah.
And I used to have to scout the Tigers
Sparky
too.
Anderson,
Sparky
you're talking
Anderson
about,
didn't
yeah.
really like him, and he was on the bench, and I was working for the Padres, and so I used to watch the guy on the bench, but I knew he could play. He was always on the bench, but I knew Sparky had a problem always with his third baseman because he could pick with the third baseman because the third baseman's third base is right next to the Tigers dugout, so he never liked the third baseman. Plus, he didn't like Phil Collins because he was Afro-American. So I called the Padres and I said, look, you got Sparky's got a guy on the bench that can really play. So I called the office, and next thing I knew, actually I flew to Arizona where the Padres were training. I said, he's on the bench. The Tigers traded him to the Padres. The guy ended up playing 3 years for the Padres. Hit 300 every year. Was a real good player, it was like that. I knew that he could play, but it was just that little thing that Sparky didn't like about him.
Yeah, well,
He was playing third base, and he was Afro-American at that time.
Right.
yeah. You know, Sammy G was signed by the Brooklyn Dodgers. Sammy G out of Detroit Miller High School. And for a moment, it looked like he was going to be the second African-American player to play for them. Jackie Robinson having been the first.
Right.
And Will Robinson tells this story. Branch Rickey did not bring Sammy up. He should have, because Sammy would have been on that team. If anything, he was probably a better athlete than Jackie Robinson. And Jackie Robinson long jumped 25 feet. He was All-American track man. He was an All-American football player. Jackie Robinson was an all-around great athlete. But there are those, particularly Will Robinson, who felt that Sammy G was actually a better ball player than Jackie Robinson. And Sammy G played softball, and was, I think he was in the Softball Hall of Fame. He was playing softball over in Windsor, Ontario, when he died of a heart attack. He was only about 42, 43 years old when he passed.
Right.
But I remember Sammy very well because he was doing a better job coaching that Southeastern team than the actual coach was. The coach's name was Perry Deacon. But anyway, back to your questions about you, my brother.
Well, I want to correct one thing. The player that was playing third base, that was Phil Clark. It was
Oh, okay.
Phil Clark. So if anybody want to do any fact checking, it's Phil Clark.
With the Tigers, you
Yeah,
mean?
Phil Clark.
Yeah.
He was on the bench.
Yeah, okay. Okay, but let me move on to another one of your questions. How do you get started doing all this?
Well, as I said before, I played every kind of baseball that you could play, and I was coached at Henry Ford and Redford, and I had two professional guys there that ended up playing professional baseball: Scott Kamenecki and Ken Howell. Scott Kamenecki played.
Ken House?
Ken Howell, H-O-W.
Howell. Yeah, I
He
had
pitched-
a Ken House at Finney. Was
Ken
a
Howell
state
pitched,
2-mile champion.
Ken Howell pitched like 7 or 8 years for the Phillies and the Dodgers, and Kamenecki pitched for the Yankees. So everybody knew that I knew where the players were, basically because I was winning games and I had good players. So the professional scouts just stopped one day and said, "Hey, look, you need to be working for us," and it just ended right there. They just told me, "Say you need to be working for us," and I said, "Okay, thank you," and I was gone.
For 30 years.
Yeah, I
you
did a lot. Yeah, I had a lot of fun.
Will Robinson scouted for
Yeah.
a long time too, but he didn't scout for the
Right.
Tigers.
Right.
He scouted for the
Pistons.
Detroit Lions
No, the Pistons.
and the Pistons.
Right.
Yeah, but he also scouted for the Lions.
Right.
And in fact, I think he was instrumental in bringing Night Train Lane in, who had already been in another
Right.
team. And he brought in Lem Barney,
Right.
Lem Barney was running for Jackson State. He ran 100 yards in 9 7/10 seconds for Jackson State, down south. And I'm trying to think of some of the other guys he brought in, but he brought in some really great players. He put together that team that won the NBA,
Right.
and that was his scouting and his recruiting.
Yeah.
You ever meet Will Robinson?
I met him. As a matter of fact, he told me an interesting story down at the Ford Hospital. I saw him. When the Pistons drafted their first player from overseas, Will Robinson was really opposed to them taking that foreign kid. I forgot his name, but he was really opposed. But Will just said, well, I'm going to just let them make their mistake. And they took him. The kid never panned out. And Will said, I just didn't want to rock the boat. He said, why should I? They want him that bad? Let him have it. And the kid never played. Real good. He played, but not good.
Yeah.
Will wanted to take somebody else.
Will was an incredible judge of talent.
Right.
And he was an incredible motivator.
Right.
And I really miss that guy.
Right.
He was something else. I wrote his life story.
Right.
And that's one of my books.
So we found out how you got started. Why did you stop being a scout?
Well, it got to the point where I was seeing things that I didn't really want to see. It was just that I saw a lot of stuff that I really didn't want to see. And as a matter of fact, I went to one minor league facility and I met a young man that was playing minor league baseball for a team. And now this is minor league baseball. And he was almost crying. He said, I should have been released years ago from this team. He said, I should have been released years ago. And I said, well, why are you crying? You still here? He said, I want to go home. I don't want to play anymore. And I said, well, why haven't they got rid of you? You can't play. You say you can't play. They say you can't play. He said, well, I can't go because my grandfather is the general manager of this ball club.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah,
And so the kid was crying. He said, I want to go home. But he said, my grandfather is the general manager. And they won't release me because
They scared him.
Yeah.
it was funny. The kid was crying. He was laying on the bench crying.
Well, I'm laughing, but it ain't really funny. It's not
No,
really
it's
funny.
not, but
My father was the same way. My father was a professional boxer, and he got his retina tore out in his left eye when he was fighting. He was a very promising young fighter, and before 1920, he was in Detroit before 1920, and he got blinded in the ring, in his left eye. And he always had the idea that because he was 19-1 as a fighter, he won 19, lost 1, and the one that he lost was a light heavyweight in Detroit because he was running out of opponents. He was a welterweight. They wouldn't let him. He ran out of all the welterweights. He ended up having to fight in Toledo. But then when I came along, 30 years later, he decides I'm going to be a boxer. I did not decide I was going to be a boxer, but he did. So I was forced to do it, and I can understand how this young man felt because he was being forced to do that against his will.
so you didn't like boxing.
Oh God, I had a weakness as a boxer. I didn't like to hurt people, and I can remember one time. In fact, my trainer was Tom Briscoe. I came back to the corner one time when this fighter I was fighting, his head was going like this, and I stood back because I didn't want to break his neck, And when I got back to the corner, Tom Briscoe slapped me. He said, "Don't you ever step back. You wait for the referee to do that." But anyway, that wasn't my sport. My sport was track.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Out of these four boxers, tell me who you think was the best. Sugar Ray, Jack Johnson, Ali, Joe Louis.
Okay, you've named four of the greatest boxers who ever fought, and I'm a fan. I'm a fan of boxing. Not this cage fighting, but the real art of boxing. Who is the greatest of those four? Unquestionably, Sugar Ray Robinson. Sugar Ray Robinson's the greatest fighter who ever stepped into a ring. And even Muhammad Ali said that. Muhammad Ali said, "I modeled myself after this guy."
He was more of a showman.
And Sugar Ray came out of Detroit too. Say that again.
Ali was more of a showman
Well, he was probably the greatest heavyweight who ever fought, though,
Well,
too.
but he, you know,
You know, Ali lost his best years, you know, because he wouldn't go into the army. He actually, we never saw the best Muhammad Ali, but what we did see was good enough to beat any fighter who ever fought. Now, my father said that Jack Johnson was the greatest fighter who ever fought. And that was my father's opinion, but, you know, my father was a contemporary of Jack Johnson's. You know, my father was born in 1902. Jack Johnson was a great defensive fighter, if you look at some of those old films. But Muhammad Ali unquestionably was the greatest heavyweight who ever fought. If Joe Louis had cornered Muhammad Ali in a corner, something interesting might have happened, but I don't think so. Joe Louis was a great fighter, too. He defended the heavyweight title 25 times. 25 times. No one ever did that. But in my view, there isn't any fighter that had the speed of a middleweight who was a heavyweight champion. Muhammad Ali, what he used to say, you know, I could cut out the light and I'd be in the bed before the room got dark, and he almost wasn't kidding. So anyway, that's where I would rate them. I would rate Sugar Ray Robinson, unquestionably the greatest fighter pound for pound who ever fought. After that, Muhammad Ali would be next. After that, Joe Louis or Jack Johnson, pick them. I don't know which one. Probably Joe Louis because of his knockout power.
you're watching the Dr. John Telford Detroit Show, live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. So you have any announcements that you need to do?
You know, thank you for reminding me because I should do it, and I'm going to do it without the page.
You're going to do it without the page.
Yeah, because I don't have the page. But patronize V's Boutique. Patronize V's Boutique on East Jefferson Avenue, right over by the Alger Theater. She has the best clothes, best women's apparel in the city of Detroit. And you can make an appointment to go over there. It's over on East Warren at Outer Drive. And you can patronize her. If you can make an appointment to go and look at her wonderful clothes that she has there at 248-662-6622. That's 248-662-6622. And we are interviewing James Ford, a baseball aficionado, former coach, former pro scout, in the studio today. And there are some other questions that I would like to ask him. But before I ask him a question, I want him to tell me who he thinks was the greatest track man who ever competed in the sport of track and field. Do you have an opinion regarding that, James?
Well, I'm going to be very honest with you, John. It's kind of putting me on the spot because I never kept up with track that much. However, I can't say because I never kept up with it, but maybe you could tell me. What did you think of Jesse Owens? And we had a couple of guys that came out of Ohio. I can't think of his name.
Mel Whitfield,
Yeah.
Jesse Owens, Glenn Davis.
Yeah, you tell me
all
about
out of
those
Ohio.
guys,
They came out of Ohio.
I can't really.
Okay, well, I'll
speak.
tell you who the greatest human being who ever stepped on a track, fastest human being who ever stepped on a track was, and that was Henry Carr. He came out of Detroit Northwestern High School, where I also came out of, 10 years earlier.
Was he one of your toughest opponents?
No, I never raced against Henry Carr.
Oh, okay.
But I did train Henry Carr.
Oh, okay.
When I was the track coach at Southeastern High School, his coach, Tom Hendricks, brought him over to me to work with his finish.
Is that the
But-
best athlete you ever coached?
No, the best athlete I ever coached was probably Spencer Haywood at this school, Pershing High School, best all-around athlete. I could talk about Spencer too, but Henry Carr, when he was a junior at Northwestern High School, took a tenth of a second off of Jesse Owens' national high school record. He ran 20.6 on a 220-yard straightaway when he was a junior. And his coach brought him over to me. That was in 1960. And I was making a comeback. And I was still competing. I didn't get paid to coach because you couldn't get paid to coach then. I was coaching, but I was coaching in an unpaid capacity. I was the track coach at Southeastern High School. And I was taking straightaways with this kid, Henry Carr. We were taking 220-yard straightaways, and I had some good runners. I mean, really good runners, best in the city. And we were taking these 220-yard straightaways with Henry Carr. And at this time, now I was still ranked one of the 3 or 4 best quarter milers in the country. And I was also ranked, I think, at number 9 in the 200. So I'm ranked, okay? I'm nationally ranked. And this is a 17-year-old kid. I'm 24 years old. We're taking these straightaways. He's got his sweat clothes on. I can't keep up with him. I said to myself, what is this? What have we got here? This kid was 6 feet 3 inches. He was 6 feet 3 inches tall. He was 198 pounds. He looked like Secretariat. And so I went down to my old coach, who had coached me. Well, he was a football coach at Denby High School. His name was Jim Stout, and he became the athletic director for the Detroit Public Schools. And I went down to him and I said to him, Coach, I have qualified for the Olympic trials. I've run a 46.7 400 meters. That qualifies me for the Olympic trials. Henry has run a 20.6 220-yard dash on a straightaway, which has qualified him for the Olympic trials. And I want to take him with me. And he said, well, you can't take him with you. Why can't I take him with me? Well, there's a 25-mile radius. His senior year, he'll be ineligible. And I've told this story before, but I said to Coach Stout, Coach Stout, you're not telling me that you're going to make the Olympic champion ineligible to run his senior year at Northwestern High School. And he said to me, what have you been smoking? This kid's not going to win the Olympics. I said, oh, yes, he is. I've never seen anything like this. I had beaten Livio Berruti in Ancona, Italy. Livio Berruti, the Italian 200-meter champion, who, by the way, in 1960 did win the Olympic championship. Well, let me tell you, if he had let me, I went to Henry Carr's father. I said, Mr. Carr, Henry is qualified for the Olympic trials. He's only 17 years old, but I think he's going to win the Olympics. I want to take him with me. And he said, what does Mr. Stout say? I said, well, Mr. Stout says he can't go. He said, then I have to say he can't go. So Henry did not go to the Olympic trials. If he had gone to the Olympic trials, he would have won the Olympic 200 meters. What he did the next year at Northwestern High School was something that one other sprinter in history has done. That other sprinter in history ran a 9 4/10 seconds 100-yard dash when he was at Cleveland East Tech High School in 1933, and his name was Jesse Owens. Right. Well, there's one other sprinter who tied a world record while still in high school, and that other sprinter is Henry Carr. In his senior year in 1961 at Northwestern High School, Henry Carr ran 220 yards in 20 seconds flat. Now, that was on a dirt track with spikes that long. Now they've got these little needle spikes, and the rubber tracks, boom, boom, it gives right back. Those tracks per sprint lap are 1 and 8/10 seconds, 1 second and 8/10, almost 2 seconds faster than the old dirt tracks. So Henry Carr's 20 flat would have been a 19.1. Now knock off another couple tenths of a second because 220 yards is farther than 200 meters, which is the Olympic distance.
Right.
So he would have run 200 meters in 18.9. Now, Usain Bolt's world record is 19.1. So who would have won that race? Henry Carr would have beaten Usain Bolt, both running at their peak on a rubber track. So that's my opinion. And we're talking about some other great runners too, but I can...
We got a real interesting question.
Okay.
People see you, they know you, they see your signs, they see everything. You're quite animated and animate, and you're very intelligent. We call you Dr. Telford.
Yeah.
What is your doctorate in?
Oh.
I mean, just tell me. Just explain it to everybody because I want to know, and everybody want to know you. You got it. Never told us what it is in.
Yeah, my doctorate is from Wayne State University. I got it in 1968, and my specialty in the doctorate was secondary education, secondary administration, precisely. And I got that doctorate because I wanted to be a principal at Southeastern High School. And at the time, affirmative action, with which I agreed, by the way, but it was riding high. So I figure if I get the doctorate, that'll give me the competitive edge, to get a principalship in Detroit.
Right.
But I didn't. I ended up going out to the suburbs and, moving up the administrative ladder and then coming back many years later. But that's what my doctorate is in. It is in secondary education
right.
and supervision.
Right.
High school.
Gotcha.
You wanted to talk about your article that you have in Native Sun. This is from the Native Sun. Right?
Yes, yes.
About the red lights and the cameras.
Yes. Well, I just be very honest with you. If we don't do anything real soon, it's going to be an irreversible evil upon the city.
You got that right.
That because the younger people that are getting licensed will think this is the thing to do. You're not going to be able to reverse it. It's up to all of us. And I don't care if you're a policeman.
He's talking about running red lights and stop signs.
Blatant red lights. In other words,
right.
the red light is red before.
Yeah, I went and talked to the police commission about that, remember?
Right, you went with us.
And I'm mad because I got hit run.
Right.
And I got hit run coming from this
Right.
program 2 weeks ago. And my car's in the shop. It's all messed up, totally mangled.
Coming right here, when I was coming in today, the guy, he didn't even, it looked like he sped up to come through the red light, just, half hour ago. So they do it all the time.
Well, the thing is this. As I said before, if you don't do something real soon, you won't be able to change it. And then the other thing I want you people, I'm not speaking to black people, white people, Mexicans, I'm speaking to everybody that live in the city of Detroit. You do not want to be called, and you do not want to get a call that somebody's been hit. We've got to band together as a community. There is a state law that says that you cannot have the cameras inside the red lights or the traffic lights. However, we've got to do something. Everybody's life is on the line in Detroit. Every time you start up now, your life is on the line. Now, I want to remind you of something. In 3/4 of those cars, there are kids. 1/2 of the cars, there are elderly people. And in 1/4 of the cars, there are pregnant women driving those cars. So, as I said before, if you want to do something, you should try to help us out in this particular thing. I'm going to just give you, and I'm trying to just leave, I'm going to just give you my email address, realgoodpresident44@gmail.com. You can send just one paragraph letter.
Say that again. Say that email.
realgoodpresident44@gmail.com. Send me an email that has your letterhead or whatever, one paragraph. I don't need a whole statement. One paragraph that you think that this is terrible. And also, you could just call me if you don't email or text and all that. 586-918-3061. People are
Give
getting
that phone number again.
586-918-3061. They are running red lights blatantly now. They're not stopping. They're not concerned. They don't care. We've got to do something. And now, let me just say this most important thing. And I'm saying this to everybody that think that this is a conspiracy or something to put any race of people in jail. This is not a black thing that traffic knot is going to say, well, that's a black person, I'm going to give them a ticket. Or they're a Puerto Rican, I'm going to give them a ticket. Or they're a white person. Anybody that runs that red light on purpose, anybody does not stop, they're going to get a ticket. This is not a conspiracy theory.
You were naming the people that were in the car, kids, pregnant women. Regardless of who's in the car, that person belongs to somebody that doesn't want them in an accident.
Exactly.
And that's the bottom line.
That's it.
Yeah, well, all I know is that this lady, came zooming at me, and she sideswiped me. She didn't get the whole side, thank God, but she got enough of it to to really mess my car up. I couldn't even steer the thing, and it was raining a little bit. I got out of the car. She got out of her car about 30 feet ahead of me, and she came and looked at what she had done to my car. And then she went back and she said, I'm going to call the police. And I said, oh, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I went and got back into my car. She got in her car. Zoom! She took off. I tried to go after her. My car go boom, 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 making a noise and wouldn't hardly steer. So she was gone. And I don't have collision insurance, so I'm just out,
Well, Well, the
But
other
anyway.
thing is I think that people got to understand that if we get the cameras in the lights, it's going to take some work. It may reduce your insurance rates. It could, because you have less accidents, and the insurance companies they're going to have to comply to the new driving standards. Okay, and then it may help you as a person get from one place to another safe, because there's no reason. Detroit is not a third world city. You should not have to have worked 40 or 50 years to count 1, 2, 3 before you cross a green light. You shouldn't have to count. You're not in a third world city. So if you didn't work 40 years to do this, remember that as I make this statement.
Tell me this, James.
1 second.
We got, okay.
You're
go ahead.
watching WJZZ Cool TV live streaming on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter, and other top social media platforms. Like, follow, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm of the opinion. I think since the pandemic, I'm seeing crazier driving than I saw before.
It was before that. No,
Was
it was
it really?
before that. I had a couple years ago. I came home and it seemed like at every light I was that people thought stop was a suggestion, not a. I'm gonna stop. They'll stop if they want to. So no, I don't know what it is.
Well-
They're not realizing that they're in a 2-ton vehicle that could kill them and the person that they hit. So.
Well, I have a theory. I think that since they legalized a lot of different substances, things have changed. Hookah, marijuana, and other things. You got people maybe now high on three different things. So that could have changed the driving habits. I think that did, and the lobbyists didn't think about that when they were trying to get these laws passed about legalizing so many different things.
I want to do a poem about Reggie Bradford because he's one of my kids, and this is supposed to be a poetry program. And on my book, The Lifelong Poetic Prancings of Mad John, that's my first poetry book. I've got a second one coming out this year, but this is the first one. I talk about Reggie because there was a time. Reggie Bradford was one of my state champion quarter milers on the mile relay team that won the state at Pershing High School back in 1966. But in this particular race, it was the East Side Championships. I wrote a poem in this book that I call Rare Relayist Reginald. Rare Relayist Reginald, because he ran on that great relay team that broke the state record, broke the city record, and they were the champions of the state of Michigan. But this was in the East Side Championship that this happened, Detroit East Side Championship. And here's the way this poem goes. Most would surely deem this strange. Reggie Bradford lost a shoe at the final stick exchange. It raised a hell of a hullabaloo, but with his customary flair, he won the race with 1 foot bare. Now that's a true story. This kid ran on the cinder track, cutting the heck out of his feet. But, you know, he didn't let that team down. Reggie Bradford was almost like having a second coach. This was at Pershing High School. You know, I coached at Southeastern, I coached at King, I coached at Southwestern, I coached at Finney. I coached all over the place in Detroit. But I don't think I ever had a kid like this.
What teams did you compete for? You competed for a lot of different
I
teams.
competed for Detroit Northwestern High School. In fact, I had a freshman record in 100 yards, 10-2. Then after that, I competed at Denby, broke all the records there, and was on a relay team that won the state. Incidentally, when I went from Northwestern, which was predominantly black school, to Denby, which there was not a single black kid in the school when I went there in 1952. I got put out of Northwestern for getting in a little altercation with an assistant principal that I'm not going to get into. I got sent to live with my father. And then at that school, those coaches watched every move I made. They wouldn't let me get in any trouble at all. They knew what I was going to do before I did it. So we broke the state record in the sprint medley relay at Denby, and they got me down to Wayne State on a track scholarship. And repeat your question, because I'm losing my train of thought.
No, just what you complete. We know you competed in high school, but when you went to the
yeah,
other
I remember
levels,
the question now. I competed for Northwestern. I competed for Denby. I competed for Wayne State. Where I was on the U.S. national team. I was an NCAA All-American quarter miler, and then I competed for the Detroit Track Club. And I ran on the fastest relay team in the world at that time. That was Pete Petros, who later became principal of Mumford High School. Bullet Billy Smith, who came out of Northwestern High, had the world record in the low hurdles. Cliff Hatcher, of course, the great Cliff Hatcher, who had been a 48 quarter miler at Detroit Central High School, and also my best friend for half a century till he died in 2006. And that was the Detroit Track Club team. Also had Jim Bibbs on that world record team. They were the fastest. That team was the fastest in the world out of Detroit, Michigan. There've been Jim Bibbs later became the head track coach at Michigan State, and he was the first man to tie Jesse Owens' 60-yard world record. Jim Bibbs, he's still alive.
Oh, wow.
Bullet Billy Smith has passed. My friend Cliff Hatcher has passed, but Jim Bibbs is still alive. Pete Petros has also passed.
You have any final thoughts? Anything you want us to know?
well, the only thing I do want to say, since you talked about professional baseball, I'm going to talk about professional baseball, basketball, football, and everything. I'm going to just put one closure in. If there are any parents here that they think they want to choose professional sports for their children, I want to tell them the average life, I'm going to talk about baseball and then you can talk about football and basketball. The average life of a professional player, once you make it, is only 2.5 years. That goes back to Ty Cobb all the way down to whoever we got playing now. Out of all the players, if you cut them up and the average, how many years did you ever play? It's 2.5 years. So if you want to raise your children to just play professional sports and think that they're going to play professional sports, only think of them playing for 2.5 years. That's all you get if you analyze all the baseball players. I think even in football, it may be less. In basketball,
your
maybe
body
it's just
gets
a
beat
little
up
bit
bad.
more.
Football
So try to get your kid an education.
I wouldn't recommend any
first.
kid play football. I'll tell you that right now, unless he's going to make his living doing it, or unless he's going to go to school on a football scholarship.
But it's education first. 2.5
Amen.
years is all we got for professional baseball. That's the most that anybody has ever played if you average it all out.
You got something? 1 minute for you?
Yeah, one last thing I'm going to say, because we were talking about some of the greatest trackmen who came out of the state of Michigan, and we did not mention my old gym teacher. His name was Eddie Tolan, and he came out of Detroit Cass Technical High School, and he went to the Los Angeles Olympics
Wrong.
and became the Olympic champion at 100, 200 meters. That's Eddie Tolan from Detroit Cass Tech, also ran for the University of Michigan. So we mustn't forget him.
All right. As soon as I get it to load up, I'm going to play your out music, but it won't come up.
Yeah, Eddie Tolan ran 10, 300 meters.
You've been listening to the John Talford Detroit Show with Dr. John Talford and co-host Charlotte Jones on WJZZ Detroit Internet Television, coming to you live every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock, also streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Contact Dr. Talford at 313-460-8272. That's 313-460-8272. Or at Dr. John Talford, EDD at AOL.com. That's DRJOHNTELFORDEDD at AOL.com to sponsor or appear on this show, or to get signed copies of his book, which Hill Perkins, Jeffrey Feiger, and Dr. Wayne Dyer all call spellbinding and sensational. It was the late, great Dr. Wayne Dyer who said, Dr. John Talford has a warrior's heart and a poet's soul. Read Dr. Talford's commentaries on the schools and other vital topics in the Telford Telescope column in the Detroit Native Sun newspaper. And also hear him on his other station, WCHB AM 1340, every Saturday morning at 9:30 and Monday evening at 6:30. That's every Saturday morning at 9:30 a.m. and Monday evening at 6:30 p.m. on WCHB AM 1340.